Hello and welcome to another edition of The Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me tonight I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
I'm good. It's good to be back.
Yeah, good to be back for another season. And since our last episode, we've now had a couple of preseason friendlies under our belts, so it feels like the action's not too far away now. I think it's just over 2 weeks away until that first game against Swansea. So it's been interesting to see the team take shape, and we'll talk about the incomings in a second. But I guess we'll start with a couple of preseason results. We had one just 2 nights ago, I think, against Mansfield, where we drew 2-2. But we'd previously had a couple of games over in Marbella where we drew 2-2 with Leyton Orient, with Burke and Kane Lewis Potter amongst the goals, and then a great 2-1 win against Lincoln Red Imps, where Tafazoli and Mackenzie scored, before coming back to Hull and winning 3-0 against Grimsby, where Irvine scored 2 goals and Kane Lewis Potter again on the score sheet. So, as a collection, I guess, positive that we haven't lost any games, so it's a bit of a good vibe running through the squad. Positive to see Lewis Potter on the score sheet a couple of times, and positive to see a couple of the new signings starting to find their feet.
Yeah, I think preseason's at the best of times is just about finding that fitness and getting those combinations going. But with us, with just having recruited McCann and just getting everything started and trying to adopt to a new like philosophy and playing style and everything, it's been the reports are that it's still a work in progress, but the signs are promising, and we're playing nice football. And I mean, yeah, results in preseason don't often mean a lot, but it's always better to get wins than losses. So,
And what is your take on McCann's appointment? Because we had Brad on last time, chatting about it a bit. But what have you made of him so far?
I think it's gonna he the way that what I've read and what I've heard of him speaking reminds me a little bit of the way that we played under Slutsky, but like that very attacking minded game plan. But I think he seems to be, I don't know, he seems a bit more grounded in it, and he's
Yeah.
he's really in that. He says as soon as we lose the ball, it's high pressure, high intensity. We win that ball back. So I think that was probably one area that when we played that 4-3-3 attacking or whatever under Slutsky that let us down was in that defensive and that winning the ball back. So if McCann can get that happening and can get the team working and can bring in the right players to fill a couple of holes that are still in our squad, then um, yeah, I think it's positive. We should be able to have um, a reasonable season, I think.
And what have you made of King Lewis Potter's form so far? I mean, it's very easy, I guess, to say it's just pre-season. He's just a kid. He's not going to have much of an impact. But there were similar sort of comments made when Bowen, a couple of seasons ago, had a great run in pre-season, and then he took that form into the season proper, where he scored on in the first game of the season against Aston Villa. So yeah, it might be sort of a season too early for him, but at the same time, who knows? He could get that opportunity and really sort of make a name for himself this season.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is that McCann's already said that like Dicko's basically been disappointing for most of the preseason in the games that he's played. He hasn't really offered that much. I think he scored against Mansfield the other
Yeah,
night,
yeah.
and he said that he was happy with that. But I think you know, uh, young kid, super enthusiastic. You know, really this is his like essentially the first taste of real senior football. Um, and he's amongst the goals pretty early in that that transition. So I would say he'll definitely be playing some championship football this year, but I don't think he will be like a regular starter.
No.
But I think he'll be figuring in and around that squad if he stays injury free and continues on, his current path.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably see him making the sort of the 10, 15 appearances, mostly off the bench. Whether he can develop from there remains to be seen. But When you look at some of the incomings, for instance, Bowler from Everton, we'll talk about in a second. It is kind of funny. You see sometimes there's this perception when you're bringing a player into the squad who's 19, 18, 19, or 20, sort of that age range. There's that perception that, oh, you're bringing them in like a Bowler, oh, they can just hit the ground running. But you can sometimes not see that in the players already in your team, whether it's that perception that because they're in that under 23 squad that they're not ready for senior football. It will be really interesting to see, and obviously he's been pretty heavily involved in pre-season, so McCann must rate him pretty highly and give him a pretty decent chance at playing some sort of part against Swansea.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously, we had a few players that didn't attend the Marbella camp due to they got extended breaks because they're international commitments, and I think we went over there kind of with a bit of a light squad, so it was filled with a few of those under 23s. So I think they played a part overall, but he's still obviously keen. Lewis Potter did enough, in that training camp and in those couple of games to continue to justify his inclusion. So um, I think overall, I think we've been talking about it a lot, really. That we got plenty of young guys coming through that are they're close to being ready to make that step up into that first team. So, within another year or two, you're looking at guys like Lewis Potter, Fleming,
Sheaf.
um, Sheaf. There's others as well that are maybe they're another year or two behind, but guys that are banging them in the under 23s and doing a lot of good work down there. So I think that pathway from our academy into that seniors is really starting to bear some good fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the transfer front, we've also been making some progress since the last episode. We've signed Eves from Gillingham on a deal. I think it's a 3-year deal with an extra year in our favour. 38 goals in 84 games for him over 2 seasons with them, and it's quite an incredible stat. Although kind of hard to know how much to read into something like this, that only 5 players in England have scored more goals than him over those 2 years, which does give an indication that he was rather prolific, and it's quite amazing that he was available on a free transfer.
Yeah, I think I can only assume that some of that was because he said I think made a statement that he thought he was ready to challenge himself at a higher level. So I can only assume that I don't know, maybe he didn't want to commit and get stuck, I suppose, like and just be doing the same thing over and over. And he was just, I guess he took a risk, and we've picked him up, so I guess it's paid off for him in some sense.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that there's no other championship clubs that were at least sort of interested and willing to give him a punt, whether it's, your Barnsleys or whoever's, or Wiggins who've kind of just come up from League One or have been up for a year or so. And maybe there was interest, and maybe we just didn't hear about it. But yeah, certainly looks on the surface to be quite a promising transfer, and hopefully he can hit the ground running. He started against Mansfield the other night, and I think played the first half. I saw a little bit of the highlights, and he looked lively around the box. I think he got on the end of one of Grzycki's corners really well, just kind of hit it over the top. But he'll certainly benefit from that delivery from out wide from Grzycki and Bowen, and he scores a lot of headed goals, so he should hopefully be able to get up and running quite quickly with us.
Yeah, I hope so. He looks like a good signing, I guess. Yeah, when any goal scoring record like that is really one to be envied. I mean, he's almost won every 2 games, so you can't complain. I think Hernandez is probably the only player I can think of that has a record that's even really equal to that. Because I was reading about it the other day because there was reported interest from Forest, I think. But yeah, it's I think he will. He should work out for us, hopefully. But I just yeah, I haven't really seen it
Yeah.
much of him. So I'm just hope. But
And it's always a bit of a gamble when he's coming up from a lower league to see whether he can make that step up, because it's always very tempting to just look at the goal record and think that he'll be able
mm,
to reproduce that at the higher level. But you see quite often players not able to make that step up. So I'm sort of hoping that with the attributes that he has, and the style of play that we look to be playing under McCann, that a headed goal is a headed goal. It's not too different at different levels, I guess. I mean, that's me just sort of speculating in terms of coming from a corner or something like that, just getting in the right position. He's got the height, he's got the power. I'd hope that he can still sort of provide a threat, even if his more general play, breaking the lines, scoring those sorts of goals. That one of the League One goals of the season was that one where he took it over his shoulder and with a couple of touches swiveled and put it in the top corner. He might not be able to reproduce that, but I'd at least hope with his strength and his size he can be that sort of hold up player, or if he can get a few headers in on goal.
Yeah, I think that's something we really missed over the last probably 2, 3 seasons. Is like a really just a real presence in that center in the center of the forward line. Like I mean, we really have. I guess Campbell last year was really good for us. So it's probably unfair to say that about him because he was. I think that was his most prolific season in 10 years or something crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess maybe not. But yeah, just I guess in general over the last few years, we haven't recruited probably great in centre forward in terms of
Yeah, we've
that
more
really.
gone pacey forwards really rather
Yeah,
than the bigger forwards. Yeah.
I guess I can only
Yelovich
really
might be the
think.
last one.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Like Yelovich is probably the last yeah, strong
Or Ndura
target
maybe.
man.
He was pretty big as well. But
Oh
he wasn't
yeah,
around for very long.
no, he didn't stick around for that long, but he was pretty effective, I suppose. Yeah. What did he what was he like 3 and 5 or something crazy?
Yeah, he hit the ground running pretty quickly, and then it just sort of dried up towards the end of the season. I think he scored, him and Yelovich scored those two goals against, I think it was Villa, is one of the big sort of final wins of the season, and he got the winner against QPR as well, I seem to remember. Um, but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how Eves goes, and hopefully with fingers crossed, if Grzycki and Bowen stick around, we've got a few decent options on the wings to give him some service. Tafazoli finally put pen to paper. He was on a trial with us over in Marbella, and really impressed from all reports against both Leyton Orient and Lincoln, where he scored the winner, I believe, against Lincoln Red Imps, and was the assister for Burke against Leyton Orient, as well as really sort of looking quite strong down back as well. Um, Good to see another free signing, another player making the step up, but also good to see it's a player that McGann's worked with before, so has a really strong knowledge of. And he seems another one who's really hungry to make that step up. And I was sort of saying with Brad last time that especially in defence, you kind of want those players who are very hungry to prove themselves. And there isn't as much difference, I don't think, in quality between a League One and Championship defence. I think it's more well, sorry, Brad was saying this, and I agreed that I think it's more the attacking quality that differentiates those teams. I think um, plucking a player from League One in defence is less of a gamble, I think.
Yeah. It would be hard to argue with that sentiment. I think Tavazoli, from all reports, I mean, struck up a really good combination really quickly with Burke. I think it was.
Yeah.
I think they said in that first trial, I think he played with Burke, and the report said that it seemed like it was a seamless transition, and that was the best centre back pairing that was on display in that game. But um, I think yeah, like a good, reasonably experienced centre back who I think will. I mean, we needed another one, and we got for the right price. So yeah, I guess it's another one that we'll see how it pans out. But I think overall on most of the signings, I'm reasonably optimistic that we have got some good players this time and I guess we've stayed within budget for the Allams so far. So
Yeah, and I guess it remains to be seen if Harry Maguire's transfer to United goes through, if Bowen, if Grzycki, if Henriksen were to depart, some extra funds would come through for some players. But I'm sort of the opinion, I think I'd rather hold on to our assets than sort of gamble on spending, 10% of the
Mm.
received fees on players as we would likely do. We know what
Well,
we get with Bowen and Grosicki.
yeah, well, I think I saw just recently that they said that for Grosicki, it's £4 million asking price.
Yeah,
Like they're not going to entertain any offers under that. So I think, in all honesty, it probably will deter probably a lot of the clubs that were um, interested, which is good for us. But in saying that, like, the only way he's not worth the 4 million is that he's in the last 12 months of his deal, in my opinion. Um, but in terms of his ability and what he can bring to a football team, 4 million's like it's a steal, really.
yeah, yeah. I mean, an ambitious club. Call it a Fulham, call it I mean, Huddersfield probably aren't splashing the cash around as much. Maybe a Cardiff team, a team that was challenging for Derby, even like those teams that are challenging for promotion, teams that have just come back down. You're right, 4 million when you look at a player. I think generally the model should be when a team comes down is you look at who were the best performers in the championship at the season before and you try and poach them because they're players that you know are successful in that league. They're players that could come slot into your team and in the case of Grzycki, for instance, yeah, 4 million isn't really a big price to pay for him. So I think you're right, but it is interesting to see that it's gone from desperately shopping him around, even just offering him on loan, to saying, well, actually, no, it'll take £4 million to get him off our books, because he had such an improved season last year and
Yeah,
really sort of stepped up.
it's been a wild 12 months for Krasicki from that offered the 2 year loan deal to run out
Yeah,
his contract to the last minute. He was going to go to Spain all of a sudden everything's fallen apart at the last minute, and he was in and out of the squad, and then he was just in. He was in
that's
and
it.
he was on. It was on fire. So, which more power to us.
Um,
If,
and just before we move on to the other player who's potentially departing, Josh Bowler came in on loan from Everton and has been sort of described in a lot of ways as having very similar attributes to Jared Bowen, who we'll chat about in a second. But a young player who's been mainly playing in the Everton under 23s. I think he made his debut for QPR before being sold to Everton. So hasn't shown a whole lot at senior level, and I guess we sort of touched on him before that it's interesting when a player like that comes into the club. I guess it's natural to assume he's going to be playing in the first team quite regularly. But a player of a similar age in Keane Lewis Potter is probably viewed as being a bit too inexperienced. And granted, I mean, Bowler's 20, but in terms of senior football experience, he's not too dissimilar to Lewis Potter. So it'll be interesting. I think he looks like he brings a lot of quality, a lot of a bit of a spark, and in fairness, before he came to us, Harry Wilson hadn't played a whole lot of senior football and hadn't really been exposed a whole lot. I think he'd mainly been playing Liverpool under 23s. So there's a bit of a precedent there for us to really sort of develop a player of that sort of quality, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens with him.
yeah, I mean the reports have basically just been constant comparisons to our prolific right winger. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think some of that perception that he will just come in and play first team football is that he's come from a Premier League club. He's come from a big club, even though he's only like he didn't go through their academy or anything, but he's come from a big club, so the expectation is that he will play, and I'm sure he will play. But it, how much he plays is going to depend on who we hold on to and who stays fit.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's kind of good to see that depth being brought in now, with hopefully the perception that if Bowen were to go, would actually add more players rather than
Yeah.
um, selling Bowen and then bringing in Bowler, and it's sort of like, oh well, that's it, that's the replacement. So it looks as if we're building a little bit of a depth in the squad, and I think maybe another striker, maybe another fullback, because at the moment I think Kingsley and Lehigh as it stands, essentially our only two fullbacks. probably the areas that we'd be looking to strengthen even before factoring in outgoings.
Yeah, I think the other positive about bringing in Bowler is we haven't done the like our favorite thing over the last few years has been the deadline day like
Yeah.
panic grabs at like whatever holes we have in our squad, just going who well we need an extra striker, who can we get, and just
Yeah,
grabbing in whoever.
who's scored against us recently?
Yeah.
Seems to be a bit of our
So
scouting mechanism.
so I guess like just on in general, it's nice to see some of this business being done a little bit earlier in the transfer window, and sort of just steady and constant. Just things are happening. I think McCann said he still is targeting 3 or 4 more signings, but
Yeah, and I think it was Buckingham who sort of said that the sense is it's two or three more, and then if Bowen or Grosicki go, it'll be
yeah,
another couple. So it sounds positive that if those two or three is another striker, another winger, and a fullback, I think that'd put us in a good position.
yeah. I think in terms of where we need to fill in the squad, I think you're pretty right with your suggestions. So I guess we will just see how that plays out over the next couple of few weeks. What is the transfer? When's the
I
end?
think
It's
it's
the
it's
is it the beginning of the season or is it?
Yeah, I think they've moved it now, so it's
Yeah,
but it's the first week of the Premier League season, I think. So I'll just have a look at that. And I mean, when you
but then
look,
it's also only for the FA teams or like other
yeah.
European nations or something. I can't remember exactly.
So
It's
9th of
weird.
August, so I think that's only what, a bit over 2 weeks away, just under 3 weeks, I guess. What's that? Yeah, 2.5 weeks, call it.
Yeah,
And and I think the season starts pretty soon. It's only
it's
it's what is it? It's the
I think it's the 12th of August or something, isn't it? We play
4th of
Swansea.
August, in fact.
It's the 4th.
Yeah.
There you go. Even
So
sooner.
4th of August, so that's yeah, just under 2 weeks away now. So 13 days away. So it's coming up to the season quite quickly. So it sort of leads me into the next question that I had for you regarding Grzycki and Bowen, because I think when we played our final game of last season against Bristol City, the sense was it was the last time we'd seen Bowen in a Hull City shirt, which has already proven not to be the case. He scored against Mansfield, which was great to see. Um, but it sort of begs the question that it's getting quite close to the season now. There's not been a firm bid for him as far as McGann's concerned. Um, is there a decent chance that we'll still see him as a City player for at least the first half of the season?
I mean, I'm very hopeful that that is the case. But it's just been a weird transfer window,
Been very
though.
quiet, yeah.
It's been it's just been interesting, and just some of the bids and some of the players that are moving around, and like just again, like the numbers are just getting crazy, and it's yeah, I'm just not sure what's it's hard. I think it's hard to read this year. Like um, if there'd been any sort of significant bid where it was like definitely like you could say confirmed interest from this club in this like in Bowen or in Grosicki, you go okay, like there's a good chance they're going to leave. But as you say, without any, there's been no firm interest. The clubs basically said we haven't had anything that we're even gonna consider, or no one's even offered us like
Yeah.
money. They've heard what we'll take, like what we would accept, and then they've walked away or whatever. So um, don't know. I mean, I'm hopeful, but 2 weeks is a long time in football. So
Yeah, it'll certainly be very interesting. I think I know Bournemouth, Southampton, Everton have all been the clubs sort of floated around, even Norwich, I think, recently. So Um, it's certainly going to be interesting. Haven't really had any bids so far, so who knows? But as you say, it's a long time in football. You wake up
yeah,
tomorrow morning to a bid, the day after that he could be gone. So all we can really do at this stage is count down the days to the to the season starting, I should say, and hopefully if there is any movement out of the club, that we've got a good backup plan in place.
yeah. I think at this point, with with only those 2 weeks to go, or just over 2 weeks to go until the window closes, till the season starts, I think we'd be pretty unlucky to lose like both of them, or to lose Bowen, Henriksen, and Grosicki in that time, because they're the three
Yeah,
players that are theoretically attracting or going to attract that interest. So I think we'd be very unlucky, I think, to lose all three. I can probably see one of the wingers going, but I'm hopeful that we don't lose any of them and we can keep that squad um, as full as we can, and push for another successful season.
Yeah, and look, it is quite a, dare I say it, positive off-season so far that really we've lost, Marshall, Evandro, and Campbell really as probably the three key players from our starting 11 last season or around our starting 11 last season, and I'm probably forgetting somebody as well. But those are the three that sort of stand out, and of course the loanees as well, so Pugh and Chris Martin as well. But in terms of permanent players, those are the key three ones that have left. And it's strange that we've brought in a couple of players already and haven't had any key departures like Bowen or Grosicki as we were expecting. So it's actually been a much better off season than we've had in previous years. So it's going to be very interesting, and hopefully we can hold on to the key players in our squad and build it a bit further up. And then as Burke was saying, McGann's got his sights set on the playoffs, and he's certainly proven last season with Doncaster that he can take a small squad. Beyond the sum of their parts and really get them achieving quite well, which should be great to see. We've got two final friendlies before the season starts against Amiens and Doncaster, which will be very interesting for McGann. And I guess, the hope is we can get a bit more consistency in the squad, a few more signings in, and no injuries.
I mean, yeah, that's about as much as you can hope from the end of any preseason. So, yeah, I think, I guess over the game we just played against Mansfield and over these next couple of games, we'll probably start to get more of an idea of what our first 11's going to look like. So, but I think for the most part, we probably know what our first 11 pretty much
Yeah,
looks like really
I
anyway.
think
But
that Mansfield 11 looked about as strong as we could expect. I think no real key players that I can think of off the top of my head that were left out of that side that would come in. Um, so yeah, you would expect that that's pretty much the side that we'd have coming out against Swansea touch wood, without any injuries or sales in the squad. Um, and I guess we go from there and see what we can achieve, because I think that 4-3-3 formation looks to be operating quite well. I think Stewart's really stepped up even further, and I think Irvine and Henriksen in those more attacking positions really suits them. So yeah, a lot of exciting opportunities in the squad.
yeah, I think we just hope for no injuries, and just we hope that that they just build that little bit of extra cohesion and can just grow and grow to understand their roles in McCann's system a little bit more, and then hopefully in a couple of weeks we pick up 3 points against Swansea to open the season.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me tonight, Dan. It is quite remarkable to be saying it, but we'll be back this time next week to be previewing that game against Swansea. It's come around quite quickly in the end.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that close. So, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully,
Excellent.
we'll talking about a couple more positive preseason performances.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me, and thank you everyone for listening in. We'll be back this time next week, and until then, come on, City. You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group, or follow us on Twitter at Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
City's on fire. We're going higher and higher. There's no turning back 'cause you're out.